And a happy Friday to you. This is Trevor Hall, and you are listening to Mining Stock Daily. Thank you for tuning in once again. Today we have a great in-depth interview that we are going to run for you with my friend and colleague and sponsor of this show from Brixton Metals, Gary Thompson. Brixton is a sponsor of Mining Stock Daily, and we thank them for their support. In the interview today, we go in depth mainly about their Atlin and Thorn projects. They do have two other projects in their portfolio, the Hog Heaven and Langis projects. But we spend a lot of time kind of diving deep into both the projects in British Columbia. It's got a lot of good information about how they're going to be diving into exploration of those two projects here this spring and into the summer. But before we get to that interview, I would like to thank not only Brixton Metals for their support and sponsorship, but also Western Copper and Gold, Integra Resources, and a new sponsor that we've just been welcoming in, that's Pacific Empire Minerals. Thank you so much for your efforts in supporting this podcast. We couldn't do it without you. And one more quick reminder, please be sure to tune in later after market close today as Mickey Fulp and I dive into the Metals, Money, and Markets Weekly. That can be found at kitco.com about an hour or so after market close later this afternoon. Again, that's Metals, Money, and Markets Weekly, exclusively at kitco.com. So without further ado, I will jump into my conversation with Gary. Thank you so much again for tuning in and for all your ears and attention and all your feedback, as always. We'll see you on the end. Mr. Gary Thompson, good to connect with you once again. Welcome back to Mining Stock Daily. How are we finding you today?
Yeah, I'm doing well, thanks. And yeah, so far so good. We had a couple of good days. It felt like summer already, so... But today it's looking like April showers is going to bring some May flowers, so we'll look forward to that.
Well, I have a number of questions for you, Gary, so let's just get started and jump right into it. So it's my understanding you have budgeted about $1.8 million for drilling and exploration work this year, and a large majority of that will be earmarked for the Outland project in British Columbia. Why is Atlin now becoming the flagship property within the company's portfolio, or do you even consider it the company's flagship property yet?
Yeah, I actually don't consider it necessarily the flagship. I guess it's kind of one of those things. It's hard to choose. It's like which child do you like the best, right? It's each one of our four wholly owned assets, I think, has a unique opportunity. They've all generated spectacular drill results to date. But I guess in junior company with limited funds, you've got to sort of pick one to to sort of lead the charge on. I mean, last year 2018, we actually spent $4 million across four projects, with probably closer to two on the Ontario, Langis, and Hudson Bay mines. I guess part of the strategy this year was to really look at high grade gold, and if you look at our portfolio, the Montana asset is polymetallic, more silver rich. Ontario is silver and cobalt and maybe potentially diamonds. And Thorn is gold, silver, copper, porphyry potential. And sort of Atlin is really the only one that's, I guess, primarily high-grade gold. So we do have about a $2 million budget. It's currently probably 2/3 Atlin and 1/3 Thorn. So it is a more focus on Atlin this year, but we do plan to do some work at the Thorn project as well.
Okay. Well, I want to focus on Atlin and get to Thorn here in a little bit.
Sure.
But now it's my understanding over hundreds of thousands of ounces of gold from placer mining had been historically covered there at Atlin from the likes of Homestake mining. Yet you're eyeing the hard rock source of these ounces, correct?
Yeah, that is correct. In fact, Homestake was also hard rock mining. They were a gold mining company that was acquired by Placer Dome. But how the Yellow Jacket deposit was discovered was basically in the bottom of the placer mining pits. when the placer miners, they basically get the gravel, and they get usually where they're getting most of the gold is right above bedrock. So they usually get down as far as they can and basically scrape the bottom of the pits and on the bedrock. Once they're into bedrock, then they're into hard rock mineral tenure. And so they would have dug into some gold veins, and then Homestake was in there at the time, and then they had the mineral rights to it, so they got on it and drilled a bunch of holes around that. So that's a bit of the history there, I guess. And interestingly, Brixton, it's taken us a couple years, 2 years, and about 15 plus property deals to get to the consolidated land position we now have, which is close to 1,000 square kilometers. So massive area, and it's still not the whole district. There's still, such a big area. And what intrigued us by the area is if you look at the 40 by 40 kilometer area or something like that, almost all these drainages are generating gold out of the creeks. So when I look at it, it's like, well, that's one hell of a gold anomaly to begin with. The fact that they've been producing gold out of here, since the late 1800s, since the gold rush days up to the Yukon. But nobody's, as far as we can see, consolidated the land in under one tenure. So you've had a fragmentation of ownership, which is a classic problem in mining. You get into these old mining camps, and there's too many owners, and it's hard to do a systematic geological survey if you don't own all the land. So I think that's been a milestone, for any company to do something like that in a historic camp like that. And so, Homestake was on, they certainly, that could have been part of the source of the gold. One or two veins here and there doesn't explain the district scale gold that's coming out of here. So what we're trying to do is understand the controls to the gold mineralization and identify, basically the source for all that placer gold, whether it's in veins or in intrusion or whatever sources it. My guess is probably all the above, and it's not one deposit; it's probably multiple deposits throughout the area.
So let's talk. I want to ask you real quick because you sent a photo to Dave Kranzler of Mining Stock Journal, who also collaborates with me on the podcast, of that big gold nugget, basically the size of almost somebody's hand, that potentially came from this area. What's the history of that nugget that you shared?
I can't really comment too much on it because it was only flipped to me by one of the vendors that we acquired some claims from. So he's all I can say is that it was sent to me by someone that worked in the area. But I can tell you, based on history, is that the largest gold nugget ever found in Canada, 85-ounce nugget, came from the Outland Goldfields. And there's a whole plethora of nuggets smaller than that. 85 ounces, that's a big rock, big chunk of gold. But there's 50, 20, 30, all the way down the list. So generally fairly coarse gold has been found here.
So you have 3 of the 4 drill permits in place for Atlin right now. Is that correct, or have you gotten your 4th?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. We're still in touch with the ministry on permitting, and I've been advised that it's coming. So we're I guess waiting on that. But there's not much we can do today, anyways. We're there's still a bit of snow up there, so we're just probably a month away from getting mobilized for initial work. And what we didn't want to do is rush in there and start drilling. We feel that there's some additional geological structural work, additional geochem that we wanted to do just to tighten up the targets a little bit. I think we're close to sighting the drill, but when we go to drill, we want to be as confident as we can be to do that. So we're just, I guess we're being patient and diligent on the process. But as we speak, though, we are flying an airborne helicopter survey, which is like a stinger. It's like a instrument that sits on the front of the helicopter, and so they can fly fairly low elevation and tight line spacing. So when we actually did a survey on the property we had, I guess, originally, but that was about half the size of the property. And since we last couple of years now, we've obviously expanded the land pretty significantly. So now there's a big chunk of land that we don't have geophysics on. So that's going to just help define maybe some of the units. And one good thing about magnetics is it's good at helping to identify structures. And we know some of the rock types, like there's some magnetic ultramafic rocks that are highly magnetic, and then when you have structures or where those magnetic rocks get altered, then you can see potentially magnetic destructive zones, which are basically so if you get a low linear magnetic signature within a large magnetic high, that's a good indication you've got some structure and potentially alteration and thus potentially mineralization through that. So that's why we do that sort of thing.
And so when do you expect that data to be fully gathered and processed and ready for your eyes? Yeah,
I would say probably in the next 3 or 4 weeks.
Okay.
Assuming that they're actually flying it as we speak. The surveying, it's probably less than a week to actually survey it, and then it's probably a couple of weeks of processing.
Okay. What about some more expected news flow from Atlin? Is there anything else that might be catalyst for news coming out this spring or into the summer, other than just mobilization and drilling, specifically with the Atlin project?
I think so. I think it's going to be. I mean, the real catalyst for us is going to be the drill results themselves. We'll have some news flow on some updates that were when we start drilling or when we start mobilizing crews. We're still waiting on some information out of Thorn from work that was done by UBC's MDRU, which is a Mineral Deposit Research Unit. So that work is near final, I think, so that'll be just more of an update on Thorn. But it's going to be those drill results, and I'm guessing it's going to be, by the time we actually get drill results in hand, we're probably talking July. Would be my best guess at this point when we should see those initial results.
Okay. It's actually a good segue where you talked about Thorn, because I did want to kind of move into that. And I know you are excited about the Thorn project, which is located in British Columbia's Golden Triangle. You feel there is potential for a good copper-gold porphyry system, and we kind of know that the market has been rewarding discovery for copper-gold porphyry systems over the last year. You've seen drill holes recover 95 meters of 1.71 grams per ton gold and 628 grams per ton silver there. But you are very much looking at some heavy copper mineralization as well. What's your plan for drilling at Thorn, and will there be an extensive program as what we've seen at Atlin this year?
Well, I mean, we hope so on the drilling side, but our initial budget is limited. What we're planning to do initially is get in there, and so that hole you referenced, the 95 meters of 1.7 gram gold, 628 gram silver, that also had some base metals in it, and that is in a area, one of 3 looks like porphyry targets that we have on the property. In fact, most of the drilling was done in and around this Oban breccia zone and some veins. So that's where we have the historical, 2014 21.5 million silver equivalent ounces on the property. That's on the Oban, Talisker, and Glenfiddich zones. And so the thinking is there, the 2 deepest holes that we drilled on the Oban breccia zone, the deepest hole was 383 meters. That ended in 0.58% copper. About 25 meters away from that was another hole that had 30 meters of 1.18% copper. So it looks like the zone is increasing in copper as we go deeper down. So the idea is to drill a deep hole, one deep hole at Oban in the sort of 900 to 1,000, maybe even 1,100 meters to test for a large deep porphyry system at depth at Oban. So it's kind of interesting because we got onto this hole 6. It was our big silver discovery hole. Obviously had gold and base metals, but it was mostly silver. I think it was 900 grams silver equivalent over 95 meters was the hole, which is spectacular. That's like a half-ounce gold equivalent if you combine all the metals. But what's interesting about that target is it shares a lot of similarities to a well-known deposit in the Philippines called Far Southeast, and how they found that it was a deep porphyry copper-gold, quite rich copper-gold porphyry. But how they found it was similar to this breccia zone, diatreme breccia zone, which is similar to what we're drilling at Oban. They basically recognized mineral fragments within the breccia that they figured were sourced from a depth, and so they drilled down this breccia zone, followed the breccia zone to depth, and led them into this. I want to say like 43 million silver equivalent ounce deep porphyry deposit. So that's the prize. That's the goal. That's the target. So that's one of 3 porphyry targets that we have. The other one that is very compelling and appears to have a large surface footprint is the Chivas zone, where we've spent. I think we've collected more than 2,000 soils, and we have a IP geophysical survey. We did drill about 10 holes on it. But when we were drilling that target in 2017, it was primarily focused on the gold. We've got a large, 3.5 kilometer by kilometer wide gold in soil geochem signature. And now we're recognizing that there's an overprint of gold and copper and moly. And so we think we're onto a large-scale copper-gold porphyry system there. And the copper anomaly itself is greater than a kilometer wide, and we did pull some pretty good, I think over 1% copper up to from surface sampling. And so the thinking is to go back, do some more mapping, some follow-up rock sampling, just to kind of tighten up the target a little bit. And then now we're talking, summertime. Hopefully, we'll have the results back from the Oban breccia zone, and we think that obviously, if that comes back, I guess half as good as we think it could be, then we should be in a position to raise additional funds that would allow us to do some follow-up drilling on this Chivas zone. So we'll do some work, but it won't be drilling on that. We don't have a budget for that yet. That'll be a later season budget if one comes around.
Okay. And potentially maybe going back to the markets later this year, or maybe next year, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's going to be later in the year. I guess Thorn is it's a great project. It's got huge potential. Big district scale system, but we're challenged by seasonality there. So we can work from May till October, end of October, something like that. So it's about a 5-6 month window there. So we hope to be able to get back in there and end the season there at Thorn. What's unique about the Outland Goldfields project is we actually think we can drill all year round there, even though it does get snow, and there's a little bit of snow there left now, but it's generally not much, like a couple feet. And because of the road network and close to town and easy access and all that, we think we can. We haven't drilled all year round there yet, but the idea is at least it potentially could drill all year round in Atlin. So that's something, if we move into the fall, we could certainly push late in the season there. Whether we drill all year round, that's going to depend on, I guess, how good our results are and how much funding we're able to attract.
Okay. Is there any updates on accessibility to Golden Triangle there in British Columbia? I know what I've heard through the last year or two is, there's a lot of people there's great exploration work up there, but one of the biggest problems is just its actual physical location and it's hard to reach, plus its seasonality. Is there any push from the province about improving infrastructure and accessibility to the area at all that you've heard on your end?
Yeah, I think they're looking at it. I know that they did push in a power line, up that way, so there is better access to grid power. And I saw a proposal that they would push that right up through the rest of the province as well. So that is certainly opening things up. I think it's on a case by case basis as far as roads and that sort of thing. Usually, like if you look at the mines that were up there, FK Creek, they punched a road in there. So when you get to mine stage, then like even Galore Creek, they're looking at options to get roads in there. And so I think when you're at mine stage, you've got something significant that's going to make good economics. I think the road option, it just becomes a line item for you on your cost to build the thing.
Sure. Well, it sounds like Brixton's got a lot of attention this year on both Atlin and Thorn. Can investors expect to see much news flow from your other projects, Langis or Hog Heaven?
It's a good question. We don't have a budget this year yet for either of those two. The thinking was not to spend much money, if any, on them this year. Not to repeat from last year's, try and spread the budget we have across too many projects. So, but one of the things we are looking for, well, we're still waiting on results from our kimberlite discovery from last year at Langis. That could be out sometime this summer. We're not sure when. It's a slow, tedious process. So that's a bit of a wild card. Right now it's really zero, but so you never know. And then Hog Heaven, we've basically have a number of CAs signed with companies to look at the data and see if there's any potential joint venture type deal on the property. So we're looking at that. With the right deal, we'd like to see it advanced, and the more we look at it, the more we like it. And that's actually, we're in the process of putting together a 3D model and / movie that will be published probably in the next 4 to 6 weeks. So we've got most of that data in hand. It's just cobbling it together and editing it and all that stuff. So that's kind of neat because it's, you fly in Google Earth and then fly into the zone and kind of spin it around and then, look at some of the drill results and what's it look like from geological point of view, and there's tons of targets on that that light up pretty well on there. So it's some pretty nice holes on that. When we look at that, we got these high grade feeder structures that we're quite intrigued by that haven't seen much more work. So we're pretty keen to get some work done there at some point. But whether it's a partner or maybe we just have to wait for better markets, I don't know. But at some point we'll get some work on that thing.
Okay.
That looks pretty good.
Well, I think it was last week you actually put out a little bit of news about Hog Heaven that had some historic drill results, even though they were kind of non-compliant drill results. I was just kind of curious, and I think our listeners would be interested to know why you thought it was important that those historic drill results be shared.
Yeah, because so when that was done, the drilling that we reported were done in the 70s and 80s. They were done by a private company. The company was sold to another company that basically inventoried the project. So that information was never made public. And when we went through all the data and processed it, we said, well, wow, that's 722 holes. That's a lot of drilling, 60,000 meters. Where's the best gold holes, and where's the best silver holes, and where's the best copper holes? And so when we did that, we came up with these, five best holes. And I thought, wow, that's actually pretty impressive intercepts. And some of them, like one of the ones that I like is 18 meters of about a half ounce gold equivalent. 4.5% copper, 4.5 grams of gold, and 745 grams silver. That's a pretty good hole. And there's some other ones to me that look like almost like porphyry style mineralization. 100 meters of, like 198 meters of almost a gram of gold and 0.5% copper. Like those are porphyry kind of grades, and intervals. So we've got this interesting high grade feeder zone that I don't think is appreciated. Certainly not appreciated in the market, that's for sure. So we thought it was important for people to at least, see that there are some pretty impressive intercepts here, and that'll get highlighted as well in this movie that we're making. So I think it's a real gem of an asset that hasn't seen, any material work in the last 20 years on the thing. And again, it was held in a private company and tucked away in another company. So unless you're really following Brixton and know that we have it, most people are kind of unaware of it, I think. So we're trying to bring a bit of a spotlight to it. But we just don't have a budget really to do much on it yet. I think, that time will come, and it is an advanced stage project. So I think, we know there's lots of companies out looking for assets, and everybody's trying to optimize their assets. And, we as well, we're trying to figure out how do we add value to shareholders and advance these things, in a financially strained time in the sector, right? It's so we're in good shape. I mean, we own these things. We've got low holding costs, so we're not we're not in a rush necessarily to do anything, and necessarily not going to give these things away. But I think with the right deal structure, we could see the thing advance and maintain some interest in it, and try and create that. Trying to unlock the value really in these things, and that's part of the game.
Yeah. One last question before I let you go. You recently got listed on the OTC venture market with the symbol BBBXF. Have you seen any more liquidity in the U.S. since that move?
We have actually seen more buying out of the U.S. In fact, we're this month we're going to be pushing into the U.S. I guess more marketing in the U.S. I wouldn't say necessarily because of the ticker, but certainly people that now we're meeting, have an easier access to acquire Brixton shares than they did previously. So I think it's going to help as we go forward, and as we continue to push into new markets in the U.S. I think it's going to open some doors and certainly get more eyes on the deal.
All right, Gary. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And best of luck to you this spring as you mobilize into BC a little bit more.
Okay, yeah. Well, thanks, Trevor. I appreciate that. And let's keep in touch.
All right. Take care.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Mining Stock Daily and its affiliates are not responsible for any loss arising from any investment decision in connection with the material presented herein.